The Rebel Capitalist Show.
This is my book here. It's called Rich Dad's Prophecy.
Yeah.
I started writing this in 1999 because I was in Thailand for the Thai baht crash. And then I could see the trend coming. From 71, you know what I mean, that money had become fiat money. And they were printing it like crazy. And money was making people poor, and those booms, booms and busts and bubbles and all this. So prophecy was about the biggest stock market crash in history coming in 2016. So I was 16 years out. So that the subtitles is why the biggest stock market crash in history is still coming. How you can prepare for a profit from it. The crash I was talking about here was the dot-com crash. And as you know, then came the subprime crash.
Yeah.
And then came March 2020 when the Dow crashed, the biggest crash in history. So this was, just prophetic at that point. And that's what we're talking about at the break. It's one of the most important things for an investor is to study history, because then you can see what's coming.
You had the opportunity to be right in the thick of things in the 1970s and see this stagflation that most of us just kind of read about. How was it to live through the 1970s when prices were going up at 6%, 10%, 12% per year? And then the next part of that question would be, have you seen similar price increases in what you buy on a day-to-day basis from 2008 to 2020?
Well, the big change, again, let's go back to the 70s, because that affects how I see it. That was 72, and then Nixon opened the door to China in 74, I believe. And then in 75, gold became, this guy named Blanchard made gold legal again in America. And so the door to China was open. So the reason we don't have much inflation, although they started printing money, was Chinese goods. Walmart shoppers love China. So the Chinese low labor costs and all that kept inflation down for, let's say, the average person. But for the professional investor, and I know, there was bubbles all over the place, right? There was the bubble, the subprime bubble. That was massive.
Right. And
then just recently we had the subprime crash in 2019. And the average person doesn't see it. They see this bubble in the stock market. But I saw the bubble in the repo market, or the shadow market. And then the stock market kept going up. And all the idiots were rushing in. And as you know, as you get older, the higher the market, the more stupid the investor, because they come in droves. They come in droves, only to get slaughtered. I was my degree is in oil, Standard Oil. That's why I work. I drove tankers for them. I was third officer. And the way you describe it perfectly is the monetary system is nothing more than a series of pipes. That's like a massive oil refinery. All these pipes running all over the place. So every time I'm watching your programs, and I recommend your programs to everybody to understand the macro, or the invisible macro, underneath the stock market. The reason I want to thank you is because it was, your confirmation bias by, I think it was about May of last year. Everybody was running into the stock market. And then I think you were talking about the repo market. And I said, I'd better get out. And I don't flip property. I have a lot of real estate. And what we did was we had 8,000 rental units. We sold off 1,000. We sold, I hate to say this, the junk. Wow. We sold our non-performing. You know what I mean? We trimmed the hedge back, the stuff that wasn't performing. We just didn't foresee certain things. But because of your work and people like you on YouTube, I said, okay, I better start moving. So we sold in the summer of 2019. And then because of you started talking about the shadow banking and the repo market and MILFs and all this other stuff. And then we could see this crash. And then, as I said here, prophecy, why the biggest stock market crash in history is still coming. It came in March 2020. It went down in 3 massive steps. Yeah. And people who didn't see it got wiped out. They're being wiped out right now.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that everyone understands that the rebuttal is, oh, well, you couldn't have seen the virus coming. It was just this total black swan event. But the people who say that are really missing the point. And I think that the point, and the point you most likely made in your book, is that the system itself is structurally flawed. It's not based on the economy anymore. We've financialized everything to where now the tail is wagging the dog.
Well, but going back to your questions, did I see hyperinflation? Yeah, in the stock market, real estate market, bond market. I could see it all over. But Mr. and Mrs. Walmart shopper was happy taking low price goods from China, and then China was buying our bonds, you know what I mean? But Mr. and Mrs. Average or the middle class could not see it.
Was the inflation back in the 1970s much more noticeable for the people shopping at Walmart and Target or Kmart or whatever it was back then?
It was a lot more noticeable because China hadn't come on yet.
Right.
When you talk about how fast was it changing, I was living in Honolulu in the 70s. You go to a restaurant and they had to have like little stickers because the price of food was changing every single day.
Oh, yeah.
That's how we understood inflation. And what you're saying is the average person, the millennials and Gen X and all this, they haven't seen that. And I agree with you 100%. It's coming. It's coming so big that we might go back to the Weimar Republic with hyperinflation, or Venezuela or Zimbabwe. And I don't think we're ready for it because, like I said, I was a surfer. And so 71, when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, that was like the first wave was started. Then China joins, China comes unglued, gold comes off the gold standard, and everything starts to change. And this small wave surfers, a small wave surfer rides shore break, and that's wind-driven waves. But I had fantasies, and that's all they were, fantasies of being a big wave surfer. And those are the ocean swells that come out of Alaska. Yeah. So when they hit Hawaii, they're massive. And every surfer has got to be cognizant of the feeling inside the wave pattern. So you paddle out, so you see the first wave, and you better catch that second wave. Because if you don't catch that second wave, the third wave is going to take you out. And if you wait for the third wave, you'd better be quick, drop in. So what happened? What I saw when Corona appeared, I go, oh, there's a black swan or a red swan, whatever you want to call it. And that was the third wave. The third swell cleaned everybody out. And I was on Wolf Blitzer in January of 2008. You can check it at the Rich Dad site. I was saying the biggest stock market crash is coming. This is January 2008. And so Wolf asked me, I said, well, Lehman's going down, Lehman Brothers. And Lehman went down September 2008.
You're really that worried about Goldman Sachs and Lehman Brothers?
Yes. I'm afraid the Federal Reserve will eventually or come close to bailing them out.
The people, if they had listened, they'd be out. But people said, you don't know what you're talking about. But I'm not trying to blow smoke, but what you're showing the world in rebel capitalists is the internal mechanism of what's generating the waves. You're the wave generator. And so when I saw repo start going down in September 2019, it was another confirmation. So we had sold off about 1,000 units, stuck all that, went back to cash. We don't like to flip, we'd rather hold.
Yeah.
So we're doing fine. And other businesses are doing fine. But you said it exactly correct on Marin Katusa about the swaps and all that. The average guy is not paying attention to it.
Yeah.
My friend just sold his business for $1.8 billion. He has no idea what the repo market is. So how did you get so far? But they don't know. They know school districts, like you said. They know interest rates. But that's about it. And they couldn't see this crash coming. People are not paying attention. And I think, this debt, we're the biggest debtor nation in the world, possibly in history. Possibly. if it's measured in dollars, we have 1.4 trillion in quadrillion in derivatives, 265 trillion in debt. Every emerging market is beholden to us. So the dollar stays strong. So Americans are saying, well, it's going to be a little V recovery. I don't think so. I think what's going to happen is we're going to go into hyper. Not this year or next year, but it's coming. And that's going to set up a whole nother storm. And at the same time, we have pensions are bankrupt. And the old guys like me, 401k guys, we're toast. So it's more than MMT or socialized money. Is we have to go to Zimbabwe